Welcome to Black Pod, the Black Pod. Take two. Welcome to Black Pod, the podcast for everyday people, an inspirational podcast that seeks to just tell everyday stories for everyday people. My name is Alexis, and today I am joined by Katlego Thulare, a speaker, a storyteller, and an all-around great guy. Welcome, Katlego.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here. Super excited because this is definitely the podcast for people like me, right? Everyday people.
Everyday people. Do you know what I like? I like the fact that you've got a yellow box on the table. We're sitting on yellow chairs. You've got a yellow writing on your t-shirt.
Nice.
And somebody whispered that you have a yellow car.
I do have a yellow car, very yellow car, you know. It makes sure that I can't cheat. So for my wife, it's like insurance.
Oh.
Because you can't miss it, right?
Basically, c'est Remonico.
Yeah, Rembonico, but it even has the name, so it's like, I know, it's definitely him, you know. Yeah.
Actually, the color yellow is such an interesting color, right? Because on one side, I know that Hitler used to use it to, if you look at it long enough, it messes with your psyche. Yeah, it was a torture sort of color, but at the same time, it's a warm color. I mean, your yellow is almost like a gold color.
Yes.
It's so rich because it says, "Welcome to South Africa, Jou Ma Se Boek."
Jou Ma Se Boek.
Jou Ma Se Boek. So we're gonna get into the Jou Ma Se Boek, which is your I guess your what do we call it? Your big project, your baby. Which one is it? Is it Yachasa or is it Ili Yamat?
I know Yatama. Yes, it's actually running a lot right now. Yeah.
So you're a master storyteller, right? Tell me a story about you.
About me. So, I mean, end of the day, I'm just an ordinary guy. He loves to tell extraordinary stories. Born Marapiani, which is the other side of Hammanskraal. You know, it's quite a bit of a distance from Hammanskraal. That's where I was born. Rural village, you know. Then, of course, then we moved to Kokasi. We moved to Davidson. You know, and then obviously now I'm living in the suburbs doing my thing, you know. Yeah. So there was actually a place. So my mom's from Siabe, right?
Okay.
Then I was born in a clinic in Marapian, which is close to Siabe, and then they were teenage parents.
Okay.
So then we moved in little timer when he finished school and started working.
Okay.
Then we moved in with him in Varambat.
Yeah.
So that was a closer Kasinyana. Then obviously because he was still a young guy, whenever he get a new job, wherever he's getting a job, we're moving there. So that's how we go from those sides to Davidson. Yeah.
You know how stories always come about, right? And I remember Felicia Mabuza Sattel used to talk about from the dusty streets of Soweto, right? And it's almost like from the dusty streets of Marapiani.
And those are dusty. It's just sad.
That's
So it's just got Skontiri. Marapiani doesn't have Skontiri. They're only on the main road, you know? Yeah. Then otherwise, when you get into the neighborhood, it's sand, you know, it's just,
So I come from Leboagomo, right?
Okay.
So I'd have to go past where you go to Marapiani. Yes. You don't see nothing until that bush to the right to where you're going.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. It's just freeway, you know, even back in the days when we'd go carry taxi and whatever, you know, you just sit on that thing, or even like it gets hot, you know where they put the kids, or you don't pay, you know? By the time it's super hot, that's when you know, right? We 5'2", yeah.
Okay, so how does storytelling come about from the dusty streets of Marapiani to Davidson?
I mean, I would say maybe my grandma, because you know how when my griza were back in the days, you know, you'd sit by the fire listening to those stories on the radio. You know, those dramatic stories on the radio. You don't see anything.
Yeah.
You just have to use your imagination to picture what's happening with the drama. Who's cheating on who's what. You know, and we'd listen to all of those. And of course, Le Makriza would also tell her stories, you know, Budingwe, Butselane, you know, those kind of things. So I think those are obviously where the early roots of storytelling came about, you know. But of course, as and when I grew up, you know, time I would always be that person who also, you know, share stories and tell us. So he's always that guy who will tell you about, you know, how family history, those kind of things, and how things come about. So then I guess that's where I got a keen liking to stories. Yeah.
Did it give you a sort of leverage in the hood when you're in Davidson, with making friends and, you know, how you navigated like space. The ability to tell stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing is because we used to move a lot, I always had to make new friends. So every time I make new friends, I have to try and figure out how do we connect, you know, type of thing. And then obviously sharing those small stories. And nobody tells stories like Kasi guys. And they'll tell you the details of every single thing. And then I walked in and then, you know, I did this, I did that, you know. So obviously then, you know, that's how we'd kind of bond in sharing stories.
So what drives you, fiction or rather more reality-based storytelling?
I think reality, you know, because I like to tell relatable stories, things that you can picture yourself doing. So even though we grew up in different households or we living in different households, the things that we do kind of connect us. You know, there's all these everyday things like we all know at the end of the month the tamati sauce upside down because you're trying to get, especially with the glass bottle, everybody's trying to get that last bit out. You know, those are things that no matter where you're from, you kind of deal with. So I like to tell those type of stories that people can connect with.
So relatability. How do you start to tell those stories for brands?
So initially when I started as well with sharing the stories about brands was, for me, it was like you see influencers and they're always telling you about the good side and the pretty side of things and sometimes unrealistic side of things, right? Whereas, you know, like for example, like if I'm talking about Dawn, you know, I'm talking about, hey, remember how we used to put glycerine inside? Just, we don't know why. No, I didn't even know why, you know, because I'm a light-skinned guy. So I didn't know why we put glycerine in there. I didn't know why we were putting the sunlight on the windowsill for it to get sunlight, you know, type of thing. So those kind of things are like, you know, the type of things that I enjoy, where you kind of telling stories about things that we all consume every day, but in a way that connects us, because we, like, you think or you're the only one who's trying to get that last little bit of ultramel out, whether you're cutting the box or you're squeezing it or whatever, or turn someone on, you know, type of thing. Everybody does that, you know what I mean?
So you know, what I think about when we talk about African storytelling, right? Even when what got lost in the story of what became, or rather what imperialism made us believe was that we had no history and we had no story. It's because it wasn't written, right? And it was like almost this indigenous knowledge system that was being passed from mouth to ear, to small ones, to big ones, all of that. Have you found that in telling these stories that are relatable, that you're creating almost a memory bank for people?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, so even the book, you know, I look at it as like it holds so much history, right? Because as much as I tell the story from my perspective, it's a lot of things that are like all of us have been through in terms of life and different progressions and whatever, you know. So I think it's a really nice way to capture those moments that seem insignificant but are actually so special, you know, because a lot of times we look at the daily and everyday things that we do and we don't think of it as special, you know, and we overlook it because we want, you know, like I guess the typical history stories are always like, yo, there's a war, there's a this, there's a that, there's conquering, there's that, but there's history stories of like, you know, how we grew up and the smaller end of things that even our kids won't even know. Like, for example, I look at my kid, he's never been inside a TEDx, you know, so he'll only experience it from how I would share the story. Because I remember the one time I was picking him up from school and he's like, yo, taxis, he's so irritated. And I'm trying to explain to him, I'm like, you know, all the people that work in this entire neighborhood are transported by a taxi, you know what I mean? They woke up like hours before we woke up, you know. You know, Budi Mamzo leaving kids, looking after kids, coming through to look after other people's kids, you know what I mean? Type of thing. And it's like, he doesn't see the significance of it, but because I've been in the taxi, I've experienced it, I can at least share that so he can get a bit of appreciation. So now at least he understands, like, no, just because the taxi is pulling up and it's going to park right here in front of us and it's inconvenient, but where else is he going to park, right? Type of thing, you know, so at least
people think taxis just stop where they stop. It's not because they stop where they stop. It's because you tell the taxis to stop where it's not. Not at all.
The taxiway, like you're chilling. If, like you're just looking out the window, looking at things, unanidi debit order, matata, whatever, and then all of a sudden, short left. He's gotta stop, you know, because it's also a bad customer experience if he drops you off the next corner. Then we're like, you Zulu people, they don't. They don't stop for anybody.
I had to teach my daughter how to catch a taxi.
Yeah.
I literally got in the taxi with her,
Yeah.
explain her udula kai, askadula front seat bala chelete, askadula the middle one, ya hubula munyako.
Yeah.
So driver or television, and he's like, yeah, no, my sister, you're doing it well. Umfundise.
Yeah, because those are some of the things, and even if and I appreciate that you'd show your daughter that, because it's like they wouldn't know even if they were to try going to the taxi the first time and maybe like 18, 19, 20 and then you realize, okay, maybe the most comfortable, let me sit in the front. But you don't know, you have to do the mathematics and the what counting change, and driver wants his money. Hey, you know, yeah.
So now when she's scared because she goes to school with taxis, I still had to remember and say to her, how fit I could taxi rank? Because
otherwise it's like, hey, you'll start your conversation, they let you go, then it's like, hey, so we gotta start back at the hello first, because those are some of the little bits of respect.
Do you find that rather black, not because I guess the question is it stories for black people who live across different spaces, or is it stories that would resonate with black people, white people?
Yeah, so it's everybody's stories. I mean, if you look at the audience that I have, like especially on LinkedIn, because that's the main social media platform that I use, right? Okay. It's very diverse. There's really young people, really old people, really black people, really not so black people, you know? And I think because there's something special in experiencing something that you've never seen as well. Like, let's say, for example, I've been Kokasi, I've lived Kokasi, so I know what it's like to go to Espaza, you know? When you go to Espaza, first of all, you know, you can buy things that you're not usually used to buying if you're in the burbs. Like, if you can't go to Pick and Pay and buy one egg, you know, but at the Spaza you can do that. But also, the Spaza guy knows everybody's drama. Hey, who's baby mama? Next door. You know, they know everything. They hold like almost the information. They're like a central hub for the community type of thing, you know? And also, yes, at Woolworths you pay a premium, but we also pay a premium because you'll buy 12 rand airtime for 13 rand. You know what I mean? It's like, but it's 12 rand. Like, you know, those are kind of the things. So I think there's that fascination in terms of like being able to experience something that you haven't seen. So even for black people, maybe Katlego Thulare type of thing, you can also get those stories of like, hey, how is it actually living in the burbs, you know, type of vibe. So it's like the stories that I share, I think, connect all sorts of kinds of people, yeah.
I think the idea that stories that connect, right? It's there's been this research that I think brands have been trying to do around how to actually capture the township economy, as they call it, or as though the township itself doesn't feed into the greater economy. And I like this idea that you create this bridge that simply says everybody keeps crossing. There's an intersection that happens at any given time. So you decide to write a book called Jou Ma Se Boek.
Jou Ma Se Boek.
What is that first story you think about that you know? I mean, I don't know if the title comes first or the stories comes. What gets born first, and then how do you drive it back?
So the stories came first, you know. So I obviously started writing short stories on LinkedIn, and you know, and then those stories, when they got popular, it was like a lot of people would say, you know, if you put those stories in a book, we'd buy it, you know? So then I was like, man, actually I could do it. I wasn't even thinking of writing a book. I was just sharing stuff and, you know, having fun. And it was like, okay, cool. Now that this idea of putting together a book came about, now I became more intentional in terms of like how I'm writing it and, you know, weaving all the things together, you know, and trying to paint a picture of like what it's like to transition from the rural to the to the Kasi, to the burbs, and navigating, even getting married, and you know, my wife is colored, you know, like different kind of cultures and how things go about. And then of course I was like, but I need to give it a very South African title, you know? So initially it was like, okay, welcome to South Africa. But I was like, I want to do a series of those because it's not necessarily a book for tourists, it's for South Africans, you know? So I want to do a series of it. So now it's obviously more linked around the brands and stuff like that. And then of course, then, you know, I could expand it into places and, you know, navigating different spaces in South Africa and how you have to change your demeanor, like whether if you're walking in Sandton at Sandton City versus if you're walking at the CBD, you have to switch it up, you know? You're not the same person, you know? The way you walk into a shop at Diamond Walk is not the same way you walk into a shop at Small Street, you know what I mean? So you need to be adaptable and all those kind of things. So I was like, okay, cool. How do I give it the most South African title that also gives the energy of the book. So when you hear the title, you're like, oh man, I'm kind of curious of what it's about, you know? Yeah.
That's very cool. It makes me think of a book by Mike Nichol, The Drum Era, how they used to tell their stories. So you'll have like areas where Eskia Mpatlele has told a different story, but the writing is different to Mutsisi's stories. But it's about township life and urban life and all of those things. And what I value about it is to almost say that while there's been an era where there was storytelling in a particular way, you're taking it up and switching it up to make it more relatable to the now, right? You're making some of these stories live on LinkedIn specifically.
Yeah. So that's why I started, like in terms of that. And of course, then, you know, I started expanding to other social media. The reason why I picked LinkedIn is because initially it was like, I want to showcase myself in front of marketing people, right? But with a twist, you know, because when you go online, you know, there are lots of brand reviews and that kind of stuff. But I wanted to share stories that are so close to home, you know, about those brands. Just to show how special some of, you know, the things that we look at as insignificant are, right? And of course, then that became the platform. But also LinkedIn, you know, that's where the people with the Zaga, you know, because I mean, you know, the book is it's not cheap at all. You know what I mean? I needed to make sure that
Tell me about
ShopRite Stories, Woolworths Price. Yeah, that's the the Woolworths Price.
Do you then get the opportunity to go tell your stories to these actual brands in front of the brand managers in terms of how they can start looking at it differently?
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes I'll get invited to do chats with marketing teams and that kind of stuff, you know, and it's more like I mean, a lot of times, and what I think I appreciate is that even when I speak there, the appreciation is always that, like, it's like, hey, we get a lot of people coming here, whatever, and they're coming from, I guess, more like a academic approach of things, like, yo, the 4 Ps of marketing, whatever, you know, versus just sharing something where it's like, even the brand people, you know, it's like, oh man, I actually deal with this every day, but I never looked at it as something that can work as like a mass campaign, you know what I mean? Like it just seems so small, and it's those small ideas that also become like, you know, viral, and you know, because they connect people. Like it just becomes so intuitive for people. It's like they don't have to, you know, it's like a no-brainer. So I think I really enjoy those talks as well, where I get to, you know, share the story.
Think about it.
Marketing. So I didn't study marketing. I do read a couple, you know, marketing textbooks, whatever, but I learned marketing from the streets, you know, because I used to be in events as well. So obviously we'd go out giving out posters, pamphlets, and you'd realize that, you know, you work so hard on a poster or whatever, you give it to somebody and then they just look at it, throw it away. You know, and in my mind it was always like, I would take that personally. I'd be like, okay, how do I make sure next time this poster, this person keeps it? Because the moment they throw it away, it means that someone have lost them as a potential attendee of the event, you know? So we started doing things like, when we give the poster, now we take a picture with you holding the poster. Now you're going to ask us, how am I going to get my picture? You know, check it out on Facebook. You know, and then now we've captured you, because now you're going to go find your picture, like the page, and now we've got constant communication with you. Now you can see other people. Now you're seeing that crusher, how you're like, hey, I'm thinking she's going, so let me go, you know? So I learned marketing in that way, in a more organic type of way. So I didn't study it formally, but I think, you know, learning from the University of the Streets is actually,
it's actually a thing, right? I like that, because
So, I mean, I did do the whole, I insisted in terms of like culture-wise to do Mahadi. But obviously it was interesting because that's not my wife's culture, right? So she had to obviously let her uncles know. Then, you know, they had to also call a friend, you know, to make sure that they could get some inside information. And what was interesting is that the uncle's friends, I think, were Zulu. You understand? So the culture is a little bit different, you know. So obviously they got like the notes. Okay, these are the things that should happen. These are the things that shouldn't happen, or whatever, you know. But some things were culturally different in the way that the information that they got is not Setswana, you know, type of thing. So then. I guess my uncles rocked up, but there's certain things that are standard, you know. So my uncles told me when they rocked up there, then they found my little nephew, you know. So he went to open for them at the door, and then they walked in. And then obviously when they sat down, then it's like, how guys, you guys are gonna allow like who opened? You know, that's not how it works. Step outside, let's do it the right way. They had to go out, you know, because it becomes those intimidation tactics. Like it's a part of the Mahari. So then they went out and they had to obviously wait, be let in by elders, do the things, and then we had like a traditional wedding, which is really cool. But it was during COVID. I saved cost, obviously, but we still had about 200 people at the house. Yeah, and what was fascinating is like, obviously, my mom's staying in the burbs as well now. So we were having the wedding kohai at home, you know. So in the front yard, we had a matrimonial. At the backyard was like reception vibe. So obviously, because we had to do the cultural stuff, we did slaughter a cow, but now we had to slaughter it in the front yard. Because it's in the burbs, you have to organize with SPCA. SPCA has to be present just to make sure, you know, like it's not suffering, you know. Then you gotta hang it on the tree like usual, you know. So we're hanging a cow on the tree in the burbs, and then the wedding day, when Bumalumi come, I guess they come with a sheep and what, you know. They rocked up, and then one of the neighbors called security saying, hey, there's a riot outside. I was like, who riots in matching clothes? You know what I mean? Like nobody, like I get it. But I guess maybe people do riot. Maybe, you know.
Political regalia.
They do, right? So I guess I'll give her a pass for that one. Like, okay, she just saw, okay, maybe this is a traditional party. I don't know, political party. They wear traditional clothes. They're rioting outside, you know, and then the police actually came, you know. But when they came, they were black, obviously, gave them a plate, they sat down, they saw it. So it made it really cool because it was like, you know, that kind of mix of cultures as well, you know. So my wife's family's from Uppington, you know, so they came through around. And it was really nice, you know.
Culture that are not necessarily linked to culture, right? But we will have a cultural significance.
Yes.
For instance, the gin, whatever, well, not the green bottled ones, but like the white bottled clear spirit used in traditional ceremonies.
Yes.
And I've always been interested in how we intersect with these brands at a cultural level. And where that comes from. I mean, halfway to the
King Kong,
the King Kong thing. But at the same time, some people have segued into Chibuka as being the place.
Yeah, I get now they don't want to be mixing now, the ladies. They got the nails and not that.
We don't know how to do it. Because that story of the moving to the burbs or the change in culture then. So brands then play into that space. And I don't know if they, you know, I was working on some campaign for a white spirit, and I wondered why they were going a particular way, because the best way to do it is to almost have your uncles knocking at the white spirit to say, hey,
we're here.
So in your storytelling, in terms of the different stories you tell, I know it's a lot of stories, but what is your favorite story to tell of all in your book?
My favorite story of all, wow, that's actually a very good question, right? Because there's so many, but I think the one that holds dearest to me is, of course, sharing about Kiwi, right? She's protected for a long, long time. You know, things like that. Like the fact that you still remember the jingle. You've got an uncle in the furniture business. Those are things that stick with you, you know. And I think even in advertising now, like I don't know if maybe because there's too many ads now or whatever. Because back in the day, we used to look forward to even watching the ads. Like when they'd send you to go make tea during the advert, you'd be sad because you wanna see the ad, you know. But these days now, like, you know, we just wanna skip through, you know. So I like obviously that story, because in that story I mentioned a couple different brands, but I was talking about the stickiness of the advertising back in the days, from the jingles, from the things that they would say. They would become you know, like even games like Tamorega Omo, you know, like they became a part of culture. Like brands became a part of life and culture. And now these days, I think sometimes some of the brands just exist on, because sometimes you'll be watching an ad and it'll play until the end and only until they show the logo of whatever it is. It's like, it's like, you know, it's like, sometimes it's like, maybe as marketers, we try and come up with these crazy ideas and abstract things and in the hopes of becoming different and like, I guess, differentiating ourselves. But then we actually become so different that we become unfamiliar to the audience that's actually watching it, you know? And I think that's one thing that I appreciate about that story that I shared, because it just reminded a lot of people, like, you know, people started, especially in the comments when I shared it, people started sharing other things that, you know, I'd even forgotten as well. You know, like, hey, I remember this ad, I remember this, I remember that, you know? And that becomes, you know, something that connects people. And that's why I appreciate that Kiwi story, actually.
Married, there's that one where there's a guy who drives, it's a white guy who drives to a black family. He's got a kettle, lots of kettles.
Yes.
He's got like 50 kettles. And the father said he wanted kettles. He arrives and says, yeah, I came for Tandy. 50 kettles.
And it's kettles.
And it is that place where brands can create advertising or marketing communication that actually switches to creating relatability, right? The lunch bar story, or I mean, we used to, anybody you tell about Bull Brand to this day will always remember how Watawola.
Yes.
Do you think that in growing, I mean, we're talking about the Burbs, the influences of the copywriters back then may have been complete, I mean, we've grown up, globalization has happened, we've looked at international storytelling, we understand the power of that 30-second, whether skippable or not, is into telling the story. Do you think that the influences for those that are writing copy for these brands has also shifted to a different place in terms of in that 30-second, the ability to build the arc and the land, the message? Are you seeing more brands moving away from that, and in terms of just rather pushing product versus building value around story and shared meaning? Yeah,
so I think now with the one thing that I've observed is obviously the brands use agencies, right? And the agency's motivation is different now, because the agencies want to win awards, right? So they're obviously making adverts for award ceremonies, right? For the community of, like, because it's like, now that we've got 10 awards, we're going to get more brands because now we've got the accolades, you know? Versus back in the day where I think the agencies wanted to share things that connected and related to people, because I think the other thing was there was also that shift of, like, obviously it was apartheid and it's like the new South Africa, and you're trying to represent everybody. And that's why we saw a lot of ads and stories that showcased people, you know, and showcased stories that linked to us, because then it was about us, the people, the audience. Whereas now it's not about us, the audience, it's about the brand, the agencies trying to win awards, and then those awards are going to get them more business, you know, that kind of thing. So I think that's where the disconnect has become, where it's like now it's no longer about the people. So I think if we can also get back to building that connection, you can still win awards with yeah, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, and I think brands like Nando's get it very right, you know, because they always on top of what's happening in culture and what's happening in people's lives, you know?
Yeah, so we work on Nando's, right? And Nando's is a brand that I really, really love, because what they've done is they've been able to take current and take it through, but they were a political party, if you also, when they were back in the day, they started off like that. I love Nando's and I love what they're doing. I, however, then also think that everybody thought, oh, that's what they're doing, so cool. Let's do it for chicken. Let's do it for chicken licken. So it's almost like you have this thing about brands being insular now. They're inward looking and award winning and whatever. Ne? I've seen it at the DJ Lady Party. So when you see Monate, I was actually all level yo neribu wada all lebetse oskambo ora lebata ka momrawa hai le bona bam para papa. That's all you get, and it's almost like, remember there was that song video killed the radio star. So now I feel like the focus, yeah, the DJs has killed the idea of what the real party is about.
The party used to be about the people.
The party, it's about because no one ever called it party DJs, right? It's party people, right? Yeah. But it's almost this insular way of looking at stuff that almost, and I don't know if it's the age of social media and short form and instant gratification, and still then we go instant gratification from the stories you're telling, that it's individualistic. It's almost like you're only talking to yourself and you're hoping that everybody else buys your story. Yeah. It's not like you're talking to people and then in that the story gets formulated and starts to grow, right? So we move on from storytelling and agencies and how they do it. Do we create, you remember TED Talks we used to be the ones, right? You've been on a TED Talk. Do we create a space again, like do we still have that where people just blom and tell each other stories?
I think there's pockets of that still happen, which is stand-up comedy, right? Because there you literally go to listen to somebody tell a story about themselves, and the thing that makes it funny is that it's like you can relate to the story. So that's what makes it hilarious. So there's still that, but I think, like even, if you look at family functions now, it's no longer about that thing where you arrive and then there's more blooming majita, they're talking and they telling their stories, the women there, they cooking, doing whatever. These days, sometimes you go, there's catering, there's not, those spaces for having those conversations are not as prevalent as before, But I think there's still an opportunity for that, like sharing stories. I think it happens in a small scale because now we look at the smaller stories as insignificant. So sometimes people feel self-conscious to share about, hey, this is how I'm dealing with certain things, in my household, because like we're looking at like status and all of that, Whereas before it was like, yo, if come next door, you can borrow sugar. You know what I mean? Yeah, now you can't even do it because you're thinking, hey, go next door. What are they gonna say about us that we don't have sugar? So
it reminds me of the son like that. The one where the kid went with
with the teaspoon, right? Yeah.
Had to walk
all the way, right?
And that's the relatability.
That was the relatability.
And how brands used to then also sit in that.
Yeah, because now it's all about, I guess now the life is all about glitz and glam and having everything figured out. Whereas sometimes like that sunlight ad, it was almost tapping into a bit of a problem. Like it's like, okay, if I can just get a teaspoon from next door, and that's how far sunlight can go. All I need is a teaspoon of it, and I can wash dishes for days. You know what I'm saying? So it's selling the brand and showing the durability of the brand and the usefulness of the brand, but in an insight that like, it's like, oh man, that could happen to any household. You know what I'm saying? Type of thing. So.
On a tangent around society and perhaps mental health and men, actually, because women kind of talk about this stuff, right? We like Rasale. Do you think Majita still have an opportunity to tell each other stories about, perhaps not necessarily in focus of what they're going through specifically, but do you think men sit around and go, hey, drama on Klumwet?
We share those about the medicine. We definitely share. Mama wheel after 12, for wheel the next day. Maranele 5 past 12. So we do share, but I think there's like a boundary to how far you can share. But it also depends on how close you are. And I think there's Liblomela lifestyle and hype, so you don't want to look like you're liking. And you can tell them anything, and you know you're not gonna get judgment or whatever, even though they can't help in that situation. But just to get that listening ear, I know
So in this era of and I think it's just more what's the word? It's more louder because we are seeing more people being women, and I think I want to call it intimate partner violence happening everywhere. Do you think that brands are telling the right stories? I mean, I'm gonna, but again, get disrupt myself because I know that Castle Mookdal did it well with the Brides of Armor when they had this campaign where there was a woman in a wedding dress and she was being hit with stuff and she had her wedding dress was the armor. But do you think brands are doing enough in sort of telling or changing that mirror and facing society to say, these are the things that we think we should be doing?
I think there'll ever be like enough of like those kind of campaigns, you know, especially because I mean we know like the reason why Majita Mabaya going through a bunch of stuff like the pressure, whatever, then they're letting it out on the women, that kind of stuff, you know. That's obviously a society problem at the moment, and I think now we've gotten into communities where we expect like heroes, like brands to change that for us. Where back in the day, you remember like I mean when I grew up, it's like everybody was your parent, right? Yes. So you knew whether you're 6 streets down, you're gonna act the same way you would act go high, right? Yes. Versus now, like I'll be driving, you'll see Dintwana smoking a vape on the way to school. You know, we'd never even be able to be outside of school during school hours. There'd be an elder who'd come and say, why are you guys not at school, right? Whereas now you see kids at the mall in uniform during the day. So the problems in society back in the days were solved by the society. So I don't think it would be fair to put the responsibility. Obviously, they have to do stuff or the brands or whatever, but the responsibility is on us, you know. So when I see Ntwana Eo, do I reprimand them? But also these days, times have changed. You reprimand Ntwana, say, I'm not ready. Like, I got debit orders, you know, I got an 8-year-old, you know what I mean? Like, I still got to pay school fees for many years, you know? So I can't reprimand. So it's like, it's almost like, you see the problem, we know the solution, but it's like, how do we go about it? And we need communities where we're able to be communities again. Because right now, if I also reprimand Ntwaneo, that Ntwaneo's parents can come and say, Wena, why did you hit my child? So, like, you know, you kind of have your hands tied in a bit, but I think we need to get back to those communities that were communities, you know?
So Ditorita Kale used to also be part of that, right? Like, if you think about, I mean, one side is how we change the age narrative in the society through Soul City as an example, right? The first time we've seen two men kiss on television, Nelly Jason listens, right? And I always think of that moment, specifically from the LGBTQI space, that it's such a catalyst moment of almost changing the narrative around society and homosexuality and trying to find, because there was violence a lot around that. Not that there isn't anymore, but there was violence a lot more then. Or Soul City kind of teaching us about how the other person is better. Do you think that we're still writing content as and I want to say marketers, because I think storytellers are marketers of themselves. They're either marketers of insular societies and then bigger communities through the intention, whether it's to buy something, change narrative, change thinking, whatever. Do you think we're still having those type of stories happening?
I think yes. You know what the difference is now? The difference is back in the day, we'd all watch, like we all watched Soul City at the same time. We all watched Generations at the same time. You knew the ball, the days of our lives. Everybody watched that, and maybe you are. And then it's 7 o'clock news. We'd watch SABC 1. Time I'd watch SABC 1 and then switch to SABC 2 to watch the same news in a different language, right? Then it did 80th generation. That was everybody's house. But now you got Netflix, you got everything. So those stories are there, but now because we're not all watching the same things at the same time, we don't get to have the conversations about the same things at the same time. You see, so whereas back then we all saw Senzo and Jason, you know, so it was like, it was a shock for the parents, shock for the kids, shock for everybody. So it means that at work, the parents are talking about that. At school, you guys are talking about that. So it became one topic for the entire society, you know? So that was kind of the benefit. And that's why those stories cut through very deeply at the time, right? But now, you know, you got so many options, and then like, you know, like I might watch something that makes me a little bit more conscious about something else. And then when I share it with you, but you were watching another thing that has, you know, something else to do with something else. So the impact is not the same as it used to be. So I guess now we just need to find a way to, like, how do we create that same type of impact, getting people in the same spaces to talk about the exact same thing and unpack topics in a way that creates like a greater societal content.
There's a Zulu on my stoop. They do not commit our heart for nothing. It became a thing, right? And everybody saw it. Because now you're right, it's the mobile phone, it's the laptop. Like videos moved in different ways, or even audio has moved in different ways. Because Hana Hosana TV mamela stories sa go thobela FM and it would be a scary like horror thing. Like you would imagine it in your mind that's what's a toilet, right? But now you've got podcasts, you've got vodcasts, you've got radio, you've got all of these mediums, and I wonder in that fragmentation of media, if media then has fragmented society the same way we're saying we're not having one cohesive little sort of space to talk about stuff, and how do we create? And I don't know if it's possible, right? It's almost like I sit back and I'm like, because books give you that. Books give you that. You can exchange books and that. But then there's also that thing where we were made to believe that Batwabantu don't read. So there's a line they would say, which is quite racist, to say, if you want to keep knowledge away from a black person, you hide it in a book, right? And to some degree, the more you people like yourself keep writing books and putting knowledge down into written content, is perhaps then that you're almost doing it. And I love your master book because you're going, I'm putting a time capsule into the world for future generations to find and pick it up. And while there's Kindle and there's still this power in holding onto something and reading out of it. Do you read your book to your kid? Do you tell your son stories?
Stories. I haven't read him this book because what I would like for him to do is when he's a little bit old and he maybe is curious to read about it and get a better understanding of the type of person I am and whatever, But I do share stories with him all the time, because he's a very creative kid as well, And I'll always share stories about how I used to do things versus how they doing things, And he's always just like, wow, man, sometimes he's fascinated because some things are cool. He can go and show his friends how to do it, how to make these paper making paper jets and all that kind of stuff. Versus some things where it's like, wow, man, that's so old school. Like, why would I even care about that, But I'd hope that one day that he would check it out and, kind of explore, a little bit of my world, because he would have experienced his own world, that I won't understand, even though right now we're living in the exact same time, but he's experiencing life in a very different way, because for example, I remember the one time when I realized that his struggles are actually real, I didn't take them as real because he came, I think for a week he came back with his kaftin. There's Oreos in there, getting Danone, the juicy sandwiches that have different things every day, and he comes back without having eaten it. And I think about it, I was like, now when I used to go to school, I used to have bread and butter and then oros sometimes, but my mom would put tea in a juice bottle, and I'd go. That would be lunch every single day. Maybe a month and and I'm like, but why is this kid not eating this stuff? But his struggles are different because he's at a school where now he's got friends whose moms are lunch tin gurus. They're packing multiple kaftins. There's one with fruits and balanced diet. There's one with this and this and that. So obviously when he's there, it's just bread every day. He's like, what? Oreos every day. Come on, how can I eat Oreos? My life is so tough. Got Oreos every day, And I was like, but it's a valid struggle. I can't look at the way I grew up and try and impose it on him because that's a different struggle for him, And he's got to navigate it in a different way, and it's obviously going to build a certain type of character for him growing up, But at the same time, we still have to instill that appreciation to say, hey, my guy, you're going to eat those Oreos. You know what I mean? Now when you come back and you didn't eat, you're going to eat it first before we eat dinner, whatever. And even that day we buy takeaways, so make sure, right, you got to eat Tomagas company before Jam McDonald's. Then you start appreciating those kind of things. But then you realize that, okay, cool, different times, different struggles. Let's appreciate it.
So I listen to a lot of, I work in brand or I work in media, right? But I listen to a lot of, like you're saying, the marketing gurus that come and then present papers on particular research they've done. Do you know what I always find interesting when you're talking about different struggles is that I find it challenging that people take Johannesburg as the microcosm that it is and almost layer it on top of this is the South African space, right? If we're talking youth culture, we'll layer it and say this is the kids on. I remember when Snapchat came out, kids on Snapchat, brands need to start communicating on Snapchat. This needs to be happening. But lately, you've got these. Amapiano has blown up across the world, but there's also these multi-modal cultures that are happening. Which I didn't know about, and then I found more about it. But Makombo is a subculture within that. Do you sometimes think that whether brands or ourselves in the spaces that we live in, you know, whether we work 100 rand or clipper, that difference actually really does, it's the same for all of us. Or is South Africa the same for all of us? Are the stories the same really?
No, they're not, right? Because South Africa, I guess, it's one of the most diverse countries in the world, you know? Yeah. That's why it's like, when you travel South Africa, it's like you realize how amazing it is. Because, like, for example, when I first went to Northern Cape with my wife, right? When I got there, I was fascinated to see an Indian person speaking Afrikaans fluently. Because there, Afrikaans is the main language. And you're seeing, like, you know, I'm like, how, you know, like, it's fascinating because, like, it's not something that you picture. Because when we're this side, you don't just find Indian people speaking Afrikaans, you know. But there, because everybody speaks it, that's how it is, you know. And then you go to other places, you realize, like, you know, there's all these different things. Like, for example, here, the street, famous street meal, maybe kekota, for example, right? Then you go to Cape Town and it's like a Gatsby. I recently learned that masala steak is the kasi food there, full house. You must get it with full house with the egg and what. You know, the Uber guy told me when I was that side, you know. So everywhere you go, there's all these different things. So it's actually, I guess, the greatest challenge or opportunity as well for South Africa, because how do you capture, you know, all those different nuances and different, you know, like cultural differences in a single platform in a way, you know, because it's that diverse, you know. So I don't think we'd ever discover or uncover everything, because even rural areas, there's different types of things that happen in different types of rural areas because of cultures, difference in where it's located. You know, it obviously inspires how people operate and everything that they do. So I think,
So then, I don't know if you'll agree with me that cities then, except not Cape Town necessarily, but do you think that, for me, I almost feel like Gauteng, or people, not Gauteng, Johannesburg. Because when you go 45 minutes into Pretoria, it's a completely different thing. But brands sit here, brand strategists, the head offices, they're thinking, I sometimes feel like they take us and they all put us into one bucket. And then they imperialize it across everywhere and say, this is the ultimate truth for it. And I want to go back to Sunlight, because Nariako next door lokopela something. Then somebody would say, all the ads for Black people are dancing, right? There was an era about that, right? Yeah. Because there was a Standard Bank ad for something and the lady was dancing. There was a Mac ad and then somebody was dancing. But at the same time, and I want to tie back to your wedding and you were dancing in the street, is that when we toy, we are dancing. When we are angry, we are dancing. When we are happy, we are dancing. And the biggest blow-ups of video content on the likes of TikTok, it's actually people dancing. So then we argued with that view that said brands saw us as the guys that were dancing, but we're still dancing. So if we are saying that brands are a mirror to what we are doing, are we not telling stories anymore either? Because they're just mirroring to get to the point. Are we telling stories? Are we really? Do we still have a story? Is there a common story? Or is because there's no more common stories amongst ourselves that they are now not able to tell a story?
Yeah, so I think the stories are there. It's just that because the community is more fragmented, you know? So it's like, there'll always be somebody who'll complain about something, right? Like, for example, the dancing. You're saying we're always dancing, you know? But it's also how it's done. Because sometimes, like, you want to be represented, but also how you represent it is important. So there was a guy who was, I saw his video just the other day talking about American movies. Whenever they show Africa, there's one accent of Africa, like, you know, hey, my brother, you know, everybody speaks like that, and it's like, it's not like honest to how Africa speaks, but then also how many accents are there in Africa? Like, how many you're gonna capture? But then if you were to show, like, if I'm seeing a for example, a South African person, I want to hear them speaking a certain way. I don't want to hear Nomza Mombata on an international movie speaking in an accent that doesn't sound like Nomza Mombata. You understand? It seems a bit weird for me, you know? So in the way that I'm represented, I feel like, man, come on, you know? So I don't even think people have a problem with seeing people dancing on ads, because we dance all the time. But it's also how, like, you can't be dancing for a savings account. Like, why are you dancing for a savings account? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Why are you dancing for soap, like dishwashing, like, oh, what's this? Like, you know, yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like, why are you dancing for that? Like, so the dancing's not the problem. It's how you represent. So I think even now, it's also in how we represent people. Like, we can showcase different things. Like, that's why I was saying, like, the power in the stories that I share is that even though the audience is diverse, like, I might not be from a certain place, but when I read the story, it fascinates me about that place because it's authentically represented. You see? So now with the brands, they have that opportunity to authentically represent all sorts of different, and they've got a huge canvas to paint on because there's so much diversity, there's so much rich culture in South Africa that you can actually showcase it, but you should showcase it in a very authentic way, you know. And I think that's where, you know, maybe the disconnect comes with because it's like, it's not that we don't have the stories to tell, it's how they're telling the story, you know.
Mr. Katlego said that the future of brands is in empathy, right? That if you're going to tell a story about the hood, then that guy, the copywriter, the strategist needs to go to the hood and wash their car in the hood often enough to go and see what happens and actually get the flavor. Because me living in the burbs, I can honestly say I don't hang out in the hood. I don't know the culture. There is culture. There's a level of culture. When I say culture, I mean the nuances of how people move and do things, right? So I hear you about authenticity. And while we're speaking about authenticity, it's not just the box, right? I want to see what's in it.
It's not inside.
It's inside this time. It's not on top. So we have to put it on top. And then I also want to know, if you're buying your book, are you getting like this full...
so this is the package. You know? This is exactly what... And you know what inspired that? You know when you watch these house tours of mansions and whatnot, there's always those Tom Ford boxes and Chanel coffee table books that you'll see on all those house tours. So I was like, man, I need something like that, but then something that can also fit on a room divider. So I even put lebekere in there, you know, just to make it super... Absolutely, and while we talk also about authenticity about brands, you know, sometimes brands solve for things that are not a problem. Ne? For example, the other day I was seeing an advert there, Chicken Licken, talking about they dropping boneless chicken, and I'm like, but that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, we are waiting for the bone. Some of us, we want the bone, you know. Right? It's not a problem for us. We need the bones. The bones are part of the vibes, you know. So this is the flavor. Then of course,
I really love that.
Obviously from Magriza's house, you know, the lebekere vibe, you know, for that flavor.
So would there be an opportunity do you order this book or
online?
Could I have an Alexis page and a baby picture on my Mac?
Actually, I don't want to let out too much. I'm actually cooking something like that because because a lot of people buy it for gifting, right? So that's one request that's come in a lot where it's like, but sometimes we don't want your name. They want to put the name of the person I'm sending it to, you know?
Those red cups.
So I'm actually cooking because this year is the third year anniversary for the book. So I'm actually putting something together on that.
So where do you order it?
At welcometosouthafrica.co.za.
Welcome to southafrica.co.za. And then the book, I love the Mageza le ausi wa ditukwane. Kana go go tshwere tutlipa hisa.
Ba bona that's the passenger di mushebile ra ba tutlipa. Hey.
O ka sena mele taxi ka 200.
Ngome Zulu no kwatile mma.
This is such a gorgeous book. What do you have as you have the brands that you've written?
So obviously what I've done is the short stories that I wrote on LinkedIn, I incorporated them in the main story. So that's why you'll see as you page through, there'll be some of the brand stories. So they fit in because it's all real life stuff, you know. So now I've just detailed it from the story from the beginning to the end and incorporated those short stories in. So you don't even feel like you slipping away from the story, and it just adds that vibe, you know.
I love this book. I mean, the idea around a coffee table, it's a conversation starter, just having it the same way it is, the vibrancy of the color. Did the brands who are in this book also collaborate with you in building it out?
Yeah, so I did everything independently, so I actually worked with some of them because when I'd write on LinkedIn, they'd hit me up, hey, how do we make our brand a little bit more authentic? How do we X, Y, Z? Yeah. Then I would obviously just do some projects with them as well,
I'm looking at Savannah. There was a conversation about what a clipper gets you in the hood. It can get you a 6, and in the burbs, 100 rand doesn't get you a 6,
In the hood, you get the quarter.
Yeah.
So on a Sunday like this, what's a 2 quarter? Your life is made. You just wake up, what's a 2 quarter? In the burbs, you have to buy a 24. It doesn't buy it.
You need an extra 50 rand to get that 6 going. This is such a gorgeous book. I absolutely love, and I think there's another thing I'm going to talk to is the quality, right? I think when we are telling quality stories and putting them in quality books and the quality of the book, because sometimes people go, book, and then you go, okay, let's see. But even the illustrations, who did I see it's computer generated images, but who did you get to do your art?
So the illustrations in the book, the 3D illustrations were done by a dude called Osborne Mukarati, Okay. Yeah, he's really amazing with the 3D illustrations and all that, Yeah, so he's the one who assisted. But otherwise, everything else, layouts, all that kind of stuff, I actually did it all independently. So I self-published the book, had to save up some Zara. Why I wanted
self-funded,
yes, everything. Yeah, the reason why I went that direction is also because I wanted to have complete freedom and control over how it turns out. Because like you're saying, a lot of times when you get like the Kasi story, you're expecting Bodasti, That's why I was like, no, I'm going to bring it like straight Woolworths, But when you're reading it, you're feeling like, wabona, like, Katya Ditla in a shop right there, and maybe so judge, you get that feeling. You know what I'm saying? So that's the vibe that I wanted, so that it's like, first of all, when you get it, you're like, wow, this is amazing. And then the content is just so authentic. And that, like, I just wanted, like, if I was to write my ideal book and package it in the ideal way, how would I do it? And that's how, I did it.
Really, really amazing. And I think to a large extent, I'm blown away. Like literally, I never expected it when it came out of the box. Honestly, so. But also, I in the back of my mind, I keep playing back. Uto marapiani, wana David Tony, wana di Bubzing. You self-published. You self-taught. You applied yourself to getting into the place that you are. And for me, this podcast is literally that, to talk to everyday people doing amazing. I mean, this is amazing things. And it literally, I feel like you've taken a ribbon and put it on this podcast to speak to exactly that, because there's some boy who would have access to social media, or some boy plomile ko Pitori, some boy plomile ko Tevitoni, some boy plomile le, and they get to see this and they get to understand that. I almost feel like you're saying the sky's the limit for yourself, right? And you need to then tell your own story or build your own story in order for you to then succeed. It's not about where you come from, it's about where you get to. And that journey in this Texia Mageza to where you get to is where you get to in the burbs. You're raising a kid, you're a husband. All of these things come together. I'm absolutely, absolutely stoked. I want one of these books. I'm going to order, but I want a Kapiana Piadi Page. As the thing that you are cooking. Yes. Coming soon. Marinate more, and then I said ifisa. I'd really, really want this. And I think, the fact that you buy it, you've packaged it in this way is how it's how you deliver it, right? It's a gifting book, but it's also a self-love book, because you can then put it on your table in your own home. I'm absolutely stoked about seeing this project. It's really great. The first time I saw your name was on LinkedIn.
Yes.
I read your story. I don't remember where it was about, but it was just post-COVID. And you had this lengthy story, but there were so many comments under it. And somebody that I know that's in brand strategy had commented, and you'd come up on my feed. And I went to go read that entire story. God knows how things thread together that you're sitting here with me. So what are the chances, right? So I'm really, really grateful that you've come to talk to us today and also tell stories, right? And I think because Lynn Nakibuatata, the gift of the gap, we're like, so thank you for coming to Black Pod.
This was definitely amazing, you know, because these things for me, it's like therapy, you know, I get to talk about, you know, these kind of things. And actually, it also reminds me sometimes, you know, in life, you actually spend your time working so hard, and then you don't actually take stock of some of the things, you know. Because for me, I see this every day, you know, but I'm always surprised in terms of the reaction people give, and it always reminds me, I'm like, oh man, you know what? It's like I'm cooking, as the young kids would say, I'm cooking. Hey, it's still full.
It's really great. And so when they want it, they go to welcome to South Africa.
That's it.
And then do you deliver countrywide?
Countrywide, yeah. Korea, straight to your doorstep, you know. So a lot of times, around Jersey, it would take about like 2 days or so. Sometimes same day, depending on if you're on my side of the Babs, right? And then otherwise, countrywide, about three days, Cape Town. Anywhere outside of like Gauteng, it takes about 3 days or so. So awesome.
I want to close it off by saying our parents sometimes never understand marketing, or never understood the art of marketing. I mean, they grew up in a time when dreams did not come true, and we are their dreams come true. So this is exactly it.
Absolutely,
very cool.
So right now I'm living my New Horizons life. I get only advertising and marketing people in nearly by New Horizons. But Glenn Majosi, but Sarah Lee, you know what I say? I'm living that life.
Very cool. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in to Black Pod Everyday People. Like I said, we talk to people with amazing stories who can inspire in your little place, wherever you are across South Africa. Remember to subscribe and to like our page, and also get to hear more stories. And one of these days, I hope to sit next to you who's watching us today.